Today's presentation is entitled, When Does the Biblical Year and the Biblical Months Begin According to Creation's Account? Does the moon have any influence about when the year begins or even when the month starts? In this presentation, we are searching for the biblical start of the month and the year, completely ignoring man's traditions. First, just for clarification, in my presentations I'm using YHVH, Yahuwah, and in Hebrew these are the letters Yod He Vav He instead of Lord, which is a title and not a name. I'm also using Yahusha instead of Jesus, which is not a translation, but a transliteration from a Greek mistransliteration. It has no meaning, either in Hebrew nor in English. Yahuwah and Yahusha are the actual original names and represent their true nature and divine character. Over 2,000 years ago, the following advice was given by Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:21. Prove all things. Or like some would say today, don't believe everything you hear or read on the internet. The question is, why not? Mankind has been deceived, and especially in religion, in matters of salvation. In Jeremiah 16:19, we read the following words: O Yahuwah, my strength and my fortress, and my refuge in the day of affliction. The other nations shall come unto you from the ends of the earth, and shall say, Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. Remember, Satan is behind all these lies and deceptions. He is the arch-deceiver. Just considering Christianity, there are over 41,000 churches, denominations, and sects, all having the same scripture, and yet they all disagree. Therefore, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, Hasatan, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. In this presentation, I would like to focus on the question when the biblical year and the biblical month begins according to covenant calendar in the Torah. Satan has gone to great lengths to bring in a lot of confusion to further his goals. Yahuwah is not the author of confusion according to 1 Corinthians 14:3. The question I have, why is it important for believers to know when the biblical year and month begins? Without an accurate understanding of his biblical calendar, Yahuwah's people would be unable to obey him. Yahuwah told his people they were to assemble at certain times of the year to observe his feast days, and he did not mention April or October or any of our other Gregorian calendar months. This is a very short and simple version so that hopefully a child can understand the beginning of the biblical year and the month. Many comprehensive and detailed studies on these topics are available and can be downloaded from this website, studythecalendar.com. This is a blood-ratified everlasting covenant calendar. The studies have been researched by Tim Asselford and Charlene Forge since the year of 2010. Your search will be blessed with the truth that has been discovered throughout the scriptures. Your questions will be answered without the shadow of any doubt. So let's get started. Scripture tells us clearly that we are not to gaze at the sun and moon to determine the beginning of the month or the year. We are directed to look to the light and not to any created light-giving body. I have been reading several warnings in the Bible saying not to worship the moon. There are commands in the Torah stating this with clarity. This is a warning. Number one, we have Deuteronomy 4:19. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the hosts of heaven, shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahuwah the Elohim has divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. Here's number two, verse Deuteronomy 17:3. And hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon or any of the hosts of heaven, which I have not commanded. Before Moses died, he specifically gave these two commands in Deuteronomy as a safeguard from the pagan ways of worship. So let's go to example number 3, 2 Kings 23:5. And he put down the idolatrous priests whom the king of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the place round about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. Example number 4, Job 31:26-28. If I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart has been secretly enticed, this also were an iniquity, to be punished by the judge Yahuwah, for I should have denied the Elohim that is above. Note, these verses are talking about giving more regard to the sun and the moon than what was ever allowed by Yahuwah. There are many other scriptures giving the same warning. Question: is it possible that some of us have sort of been in violation of unknowingly worshipping, serving the sun and the moon by looking to the sunset to usher in the Sabbath, worship statutes, looking to the moon with a conjunction or crescent to calculate when the month begins, so we can calculate the appointed worship statutes? Some light candles to usher in these worship times. Is that about the same as burning incense? Are you guilty too? We must ask these questions ourselves. Yahuwah tells us explicitly that the moon is not to be followed. He destroyed Jericho and placed a curse on the one who rebuilt it. The Hebrew language reveals a deeper understanding that the curse is placed upon the one who built the worship practices of the moon. That is why the moon of Revelation 12 is placed under the feet of the bride. Question: what does it mean? We read in Revelation 12:1, and a great sign was seen in the heaven, a woman clad with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. The bride is illuminated by the light of the sun. The light of the sun provides the glory. The moon has been trampled underfoot. It is no longer of value, because the bride of Yahusha has risen above and trampled the false deception of the moon, determined feasts and festivals below her feet. Of course, claims that certain sects developed a procedure that involved the citing by two witnesses. This is believed to be correct by many today. Today this sect is called the Karaites. The source of this practice is from the Mishnah, not from the Torah. The pre-Islamic moon deity called Allah is symbolized by a crescent moon and star. The origin comes from the Hindu culture and the worship on Shiva. The crescent moon was also venerated in the Egyptian culture, with the moon below a solar disk. Because Christianity sprang from Alexandria, Egypt, these objects in the sky were also adopted for veneration. This is from the website www.fossilizedcustoms.com. Islam's most prominent symbol is a crescent moon, and that is Shiva's symbol. The pre-Islamic Arabs worshipped 360 sky deities, one of which was the greatest, called Allah. Allah is represented by the crescent moon and was the most favored of all deities by Muhammad's clan. The 360 deities means the Kaaba was originally a Hindu shrine dedicated to the worship of the host of heaven. But remember, Yahuwah is not represented by any kind of symbol, and certainly he is not using the objects seen in the sky to determine his appointed times. The Torah never mentions crescent or sliver or full moon. Regarding sighting the moon in the sky, there is not one place in the original Hebrew scriptures where Yahuwah points directly to the moon as an authority over biblical time. If a teaching is not found in scripture, why should it be practiced as if it were there? Lunar deception. That means that the moon is not in charge of telling us when the biblical month or year begins. Question: what about the verses in scripture talking about the new moon? If a person researches in the Hebrew text the phrase new moon as found in our present received text scriptures, it cannot be found. The words new moon, promoting allegiance given to the moon, simply do not exist in the original Hebrew script. The words new moon have been infused into our modern scriptures. The Masoretic rabbis saturated their belief patterns into their version of the scriptures, which is where we have received many editions of the scriptures today. Here are things that are important to know. Pagan moon worship crept into early amongst Yahuwah's people after Moses died. Yahuwah gave them a sign. Would they recognize the sign was for them? Question: will we follow the moon apostasy, or will we heed the Torah worship guidelines for the biblical month? Here we have a challenge. If anyone is following the lunar cycles to mark any type of worship, perhaps this study will test his or her belief system. Here is a short review. Some people start the day at midnight, and others in the evening. We have learned that the biblical day starts in the morning, at dawn, before sunrise. Just listen to the birds and the rooster, according to Job 12:7. I have discussed the topic when the biblical day starts in another presentation already. The 24-hour cycle is from dawn to dawn. See Matthew 28:1. The light hours are called the day, and the dark hours are called the night. In this presentation, we want to find out when the biblical month and the biblical year starts, according to Scripture, so we can determine how to count out the yearly festivals and celebrate them at the proper appointed time. In order to find out when the biblical year starts, we need to know when the old year ends according to Scripture. According to Scripture, the old year ends at the Tekufa, or the spring equinox, as calculated in the northern hemisphere. Here are some scriptural Tekufa references. The number H8622. This is Tekufa from H5362, a revolution of the sun, course of time, lapse, according to King James Version, circuit, come about, end. Exodus 34:22, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the firstfruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. H 86:22. Let's go to Psalm 19:6. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit, that's number 8622, under the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. First Chronicles 24:23. And it came to pass at the end of the year, and the end here is number H8622, that the host of Syria came up against him, and they came to Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the princes of the people from among the people, and sent all the spoil of them unto the king of Damascus. Question: what is the vernal tekufa, or the equinox? So let us look at the Tekufa. The sun is very accurately positioned in the Maserat, the constellations, causing a perfect non-deviating arc over the equator at the spring and fall equinox. The vernal equinox is a final celestial event around the world that ends the old year and determines the start of the scriptural feast and festival year the next day at dawn. The first day of the year and of the first month begins one day after the vernal equinox. That is the month of Abib, the beginning of spring, also known as Sivan. There are always 30 days in the biblical month and 360 days in a biblical year. Genesis 7 and 8. 150 days equals 5 months. Yahuwah reminds Moses about the exact timing for the very first month of his yearly Moedim worship cycles in Exodus 12:2. This month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. We have patterns between the flood and Mount Sinai. The scripture proof from the flood to Mount Sinai, the creation months were 30 days per month for 2,250 years. Let's look at it. Noah and the flood, 30-day months. The Genesis account, 1,650 years from creation. We read in Genesis 7:11 and 24, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So let's go to Genesis 8:3-4. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, of the 17th day of the month, upon the mountain of Ararat. So do the math, 30 days months, the second month and the 17th days, plus 150 days equals the 7 months plus the 17th day. And that was 2350 BC. Conclusion. Month start, count to 30. The moon has no say, absolutely no say, about when the month begins. Keep it simple. For the month's start, just count 1 to 30 and start over for the new month. Hezekiah's request for the shadow to move backwards 10 degrees. Here's an important question. What would Hezekiah's sundial experience have to do with Yahuwah's year start? Hezekiah's testimony in the scripture, the testimony for the sundial moving backwards 10 degrees, is recorded 3 times in the scriptures. Many of the Bible testimonies are recorded only twice. Hezekiah's testimony is given more attention. A Bible hermeneutic to remember. Yahuwah does not repeat things of no great consequence. That means when something is given attention an unusual number of times, it is time to take notice. Here we have three scriptures that testify for Hezekiah. 2 Kings 20, 9-11. And Isaiah said, This sign shalt thou have of Yahuwah, that Yahuwah will do the thing that he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forth 10 degrees, or go back 10 degrees? Verse 10. And Hezekiah answered, It is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. Nay, but let the shadow return backwards 10 degrees. Verse 11. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto Yahuwah, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backwards, by which it had gone down. Second Chronicles 32:24. In those days Hezekiah was sick to the death, and prayed unto Yahuwah, and he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign, the shadow moving backwards on the sundial. Isaiah 38:7-9. And this shall be a sign unto thee from Yahuwah, that Yahuwah will do this thing that he has spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degrees, which is gone down in the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backwards. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. The writing of Hezekiah king of Judah, when he had been sick, and was recovered of his sickness. Let's look at the following historical confirmations. Historical confirmation from Velikovsky, written in 1950, shows at the time of the Exodus, 30 different cultures had the same calendar of 12 months with exactly 30 days months for a total of 360 days a year. These 30 world cultures were in an upheaval lasting about 50 years, when the days of the month and year were in flux before settling down to a 365 a quarter day year and 29.5 day lunar month. Velikovsky claims the historically recorded time of the calendar change period was from about 725 to 675 BC. His theory is based on a near collision with a wandering planet-sized object which caused the Earth to change its orbit slightly around the Sun. Thus a change in the calendar days. This also affected the Moon's circuit. Historical confirmation Wong, 2006, calculated the year of Hezekiah's sundial sign to be 713 BC. He suggests that Yahuwah actually moved the orbits of the Earth and Moon to accomplish this sign of moving the sundial shadow to 10 degrees backwards. This is an alternative to the catastrophic thesis of Velikovsky. However, both show the year change happened right around the same time, plus or minus a few years. Facts where Velikovsky and Wong's agree. 30 cultures around the world used the 360-day year and 30-day month before 713 BC. Remember, the Exodus was around 1450 BC. Wiedershoff India had a 360-day year and record the moon waxed for 15 days and waned for 15 days in a month. Although the sun moved north 180 days and moved south 180 days per year. In a later period, the Vedas record the year was reformed to 365.25 days a year. Number two, ancient Persia had a 360-day calendar. Later it was reformed to add 5 Gatha, that means prayer, days to the year length. Number three, Sumerians had the 360-day year and 30-day month. Number four, Babylonians adopted Sumerian calendar. At the beginning of the 7th century BC, Babylon added 5 days to the year. Assyria, clay tablets from the royal library in Nineveh showed a 360-day year and 30-day month. Number 6, ancient Egypt. The Canopus Decree and Ebers Papyrus calendar had the same 360-day year. The year change occurred in the 8th or 7th century BC, according to Plutarch and the Book of Sotis, adding 5 Epagomena days to the year. These were celebrated birthdays for 5 gods. Now the question, what are epagomenal days? The Egyptian year was divided into 12 months of 30 days each, which means that each year was about 5 days short of the astronomical year. In order to compensate for this difference, 5 extra days were added to the year called epagomenal days or birthdays of 5 gods. Because they were not part of the normal year created by the gods, the Egyptians regarded these days as particularly ominous, and texts have survived listing exactly what may and may not be done during this period. Even the addition of these 5 days did not solve the concurrence problem with the solar year, however, which lasts 365 a quarter days. As a result, the calendar shifted at a rate of 1 day every 4 years, and over time an important gap opened up between the real and the theoretical calendars. This meant that the lunation no longer occurred in the inundation season, and the warm season no longer in the summer. The two calendars only coincided again once every 1,460 years. After an unsuccessful attempt to revise the calendar in the reign of Ptolemy III, this problem was eventually solved by the Romans by adding 1 leap day every 4 years to the Alexandrian calendar. The source is www.globalegyptianmuseum.org. Facts were Velikovsky and Wong agree. Continued. Rome had a 360-day year at the time of Romulus. Number two, Mayans of Mexico had a 360-day year. Number three, the Incas of Peru in Central and South America had 360 days and later added 5 1/4 days. Number five, China added 5 days called Qiying days. Number five, Polynesia had 360 days in a year. Number 6. Many religions around the world base their belief on the number 360, seeing it as a sacred number by naming gods, idols, temples, etc., one for each day of the year. Facts where Velikovsky and Wrong agree continued. The 360-degree circle and 360-degree compass in use all over the world is a remnant of the year length prior to the change when the year length was exactly 360 days. Velikovsky also writes, all over the world we find that there was at some time the same calendar of 360 days, and that at some later date, about the 7th century before the present era, 5 days were added at the end of the year as days over the year or days of nothing. Scholars who investigated the calendars of the Incas of Peru and the Mayas of Yucatan wondered at the calendar of 360 days, so did the scholars who studied the calendars of the Egyptians, the Persians, Hindus, Chaldeans, Assyrians, Hebrews, Chinese, Greeks, or the Romans. That is from Worlds in Collision, page 336. Hezekiah's sundial shadow went back. Secular historical evidence is very supportive of the 360-day creation calendar. Ancient civilizations had to adapt their calendars to 365 accorded days per year around the time of Hezekiah's request for the sundial sign in approximately 713 to 712 BC. Some believe it was 701 BC. Reasonable assumption. One way for 5 1/4 days to be added to the 360-day year calendar is for a giant heavenly body, such as an asteroid, to pass on the opposite side of the Earth's orbit from the Sun. Magnetic pull could draw the Earth out of its usual orbit enough to enlarge the yearly circuit. No days of the week would have been lost. Just an additional number of days would be added to the 360-day circuit. This event happened about 100 years before Judah's captivity. Sundial shadow and lunar cycle shift. We know the records of the flood account confirm there were 150 days within a 5 month period, or 30 days a month. Since the sundial miracle, the moon cycle is shorter than 30 days according to Yahuwah's perfect creation. His perfection would not include a lunar cycle that wanders from 28 to 29.5 days a month. The moon month cycle was separate from Yahuwah's perfect months. See the study on moon for more information. Moon worship was well established among the pagans for a long time. Jericho was destroyed because it was a moon worshipping city. Effect on the lunar cycle. Reduction of the lunar cycle from 30 to 29.5 days per cycle. Is it possible that Yahuwah altered the length of the lunar cycle at this time to separate the pagan worship practices from the beginning of his new month? What if the sun's shadow went forward? Then what? If the shadow going backwards would lengthen the circuit of the sun, then the shadow moving forward would shorten the yearly circuit of the sun. Is it reasonable to conclude the year would have been shortened by 5¼ days if the shadow moved forward 10 degrees? That would be 360 minus 5¼ day to 354.75 solar days per year. So let's do the math. Considering the lunar cycle would have recalculated to 29½ days per month. 12 months times 29½ equals 354 lunar days per year. Do you see the problem? The lunar cycle here would have been so close to the solar cycle that it may have been impossible to understand the calendar needed to be restored without gazing at the moon. Now what about Judah in Babylon? Judah is carried off to Babylon about 100 years after the 360-day creation covenant calendar went astray. Pagan Babylon had long worshipped the sun, coming up and going down, and the moon, as well as other bodies in the heavens, which Israel and us are commanded not to do. How reasonable is it to conclude that after Judah had been in Babylon for 70 years, they came back to Jerusalem with many Babylonian traditions that have now moved the divine requirement for the commandments of the worship statutes from the equinox calculation to the moon calculation. Sighting the crescent moon happens near sunset. This factor alone shows how easy it would have been for them to adapt to the sunset beginning the new day and the crescent moon beginning the new month. Question: will the creation calendar ever be restored? There are many prophetic timelines that still need to run and complete fulfillment before the end of time. Specifically the Daniel 12 timelines of 1260, 1290, and 1335 literal days. It is very difficult for these timelines to attain fulfillment on the current solar year of 365¼ days per year. Is it possible the first trumpet plague of Revelation will have something to do with the setting Yahuwah's calendar back to his original design? Revelation 8:7, the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. When the covenant calendar is restored, will Yahuwah's people understand this as a sign for them? What event in the future could occur to shorten the yearly circuit as we know it now? Do you remember Chelyabinsk in Russia when a meteor exploded in an air blast at a height of around 29.7 kilometers or 18.4 miles? He had a speed of 60,000 to 69,000 kilometers per hour or 40,000 to 42,900 miles per hour. The light from the meteor was brighter than the sun up to 100 kilometers away. Some eyewitnesses also felt intense heat from the fireball. Its explosion created panic among local residents, and about 1,500 people were injured seriously enough to seek medical treatment. Some 7,200 buildings in 6 cities across the regions were damaged by the explosion's shockwave. It is the largest known natural object to have entered Earth's atmosphere since 1908. First trumpet of Revelation 8. Let's read it. Verse 7. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees was burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Is it possible? Just a question. An heavenly body such as an asteroid, a meteor, could be the fulfillment of the first trumpet plague? Is it possible such an event occurring between the Earth and the Sun could shorten the yearly circuit back to 360 days per year? In Isaiah 46, 9-10, remember the former things of old, for I am Elohim and there is none else, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Earth in distress, and a sign for Yahuwah's people. Could this be a declaration for the earth to return to Yahuwah's original covenant calendar of 360 days per year? Yahuwah's calendar is 12 months with 30 days each. Yahuwah's calendar easily designates the timing of the annual festivals. It has no attachment to lunar cycles ever. For day start, we simply look to the first light in the sky as the day breaks, not at sunrise. For year end, we simply track the sign provided by the sun, stars, earth, and light to determine the equinox. The next day is a new year start and the new month start. For month start thereafter, just count to 30. Then start back at your number 1 count for each new month until you have counted 360 days. Then watch for the straight shadow sign to mark the last day of the year. It seriously is time to consider the simple witness Moses has given to us for the month calculations. This is a good first step for coming into alignment with the priesthood of the Melchizedek covenant, coming into covenant calendar timing with Yahuwah's calendar that is so perfect, simple, and elegant. So what do we do with the 5 1/4 extra days? Yahuwah's first day of the new year is the day after the equinox, because it is the equinox that ends the old year. Logically, the next day at dawn begins the new year. This happens to be the first day of spring and the first day of Abib. To find the first day of the second month, just count to 30. The 30th day ends the old month. The next day begins the new month. Very simple. Every month has 30 days, no more, no less. No days have to be intercalculated to make up for the extra 5 1/4 days past 360. Just as Noah had 5 months, all with 30 days a month, so Yahuwah's first 7 months will all have 30 days per month. After that, just continue counting for 30 days per month to the end of the 12th month. Then simply watch and wait for the equinox to arrive, which is a sign that the old year is over, and the next day is the first day of the new year and the first day of the new month. Everything resets automatically. Simple. May Yahuwah bless you abundantly in your search for His divine covenant calendar truth. Please give us a thumb up if you agree with this message. Supreme Provider is Yahushua HaMashiach, revised and recorded by myself. If you want to get in contact with me, go to Malachi 4, DOT4 at gmail.com.